You're on.
Sheepdog with a black belt. Sticks, Stephen and Athena. As part of my ongoing Krav Maga training, I decided to travel to the USA and train with Ernie. Although I was skilled in striking and experienced in grappling, I was new to this more street-orientated method and was keen to learn more. Ernie was excited to host a delegation from the UK and opened his school to use and gave us far more time than he needed to. He introduced me to a variety of his students and instructors, 3 of whom left an impression on me. Sticks was a guy who exuded sheepdog. He was not a cop, but had spent and was continuing to spend considerable time and money training himself to become not just a competent operator, but also a trainer of operators. He recognised that carrying a gun was not enough, and a far more complete fighting package was necessary. I'm calling him Sticks partly because I don't want to name him due to his job, but also because of our first training session together. Sticks was relatively new to martial arts and at the time not as experienced as me. Consequently, I was far more likely to get injured. Some people may think this is the reverse of what seems logical, but actually it makes sense. Skilled martial artists of any type can use their techniques with precision and with enough speed and force to accomplish whatever goal they wish to. In competition, that may be to score points or trying to knock the other guy out, but in a club level training, partner sessions or sparring, it is just enough power to let the other person know they've been tagged, but not enough to cause an injury. Inexperienced students have underdeveloped, or in some cases zero, control and are chaotic, random, and at times overly aggressive. That means that often the senior grade will show restraint and control by tagging a low grade, but the low grade often goes far too fast, hard and uncontrolled, and often will hurt the senior grade. This is not malicious, but just a consequence of needing to learn the rules. The safest people to train with, therefore, are often the formidable looking black belts and not the meek white belts. So Sticks was a good guy, keen and excited to be training. He had discovered using Kali sticks, which are short bamboo, approximately 2 feet long, which can be used as they are to strike and or to simulate machete-type knife cuts. Often 2 sticks are used, 1 in each hand. Training their use is useful, as it adds another dimension to one's ability to use a weapon, but it also trains the person on the other end to learn how to read a blunt object and trajectories, and consequently how you can avoid them. Sticks and I were going through some fairly basic moves, and he asked me if I wanted to spar. Somewhat foolishly, I agreed, and even more foolishly, I did not insist on discussing the exact rules. Sticks was aware I was a high-level striker, and I assume he upped his game to compensate for this. We faced off, we touched sticks and began to circle each other. I had actually very little experience, and the one thing I had taken from training with Kali sticks was that most people, almost all in fact, regardless of their skill level in other abilities, when you put a stick in their hand they forget everything else and become unskilled swingers of the stick. Being aware of this, I tried to use my stick to complement my existing skills and not replace them. We circled and threw testing strikes at each other, Sticks using his sticks and I blocking using my sticks to hit his legs or midsection to keep my distance. He was becoming frustrated with my non-stick technique and suddenly burst forward with an excellent overhead strike that landed squarely and neatly over my right eye. Bam! Unsurprisingly, my eye split open and the main concern was to keep the copious amounts of blood pouring out of my head off the mats. Stick was very apologetic and it ended up just being one of those funny things that happens. He's since become a very accomplished martial artist, easily capable of giving me a very hard time, and I rate him highly as a trainer. In fact, years later, he pretty much beat me up in a rank testing, which, although I appreciate his intent at the time, it was frustrating that he had got so good, and I had apparently not matched his learning curve. At the same time, I met Stephen, who was a senior grade at the club. He's a sponge for learning and had been devoting most of his current attention into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. At the time, I think he may have only been a purple belt, but when I say he's a prodigy, I don't use the term lightly. In fact, he would go on to win the North American Grappling Association, or NAGA, championships, and is currently an accomplished BJJ black belt. He is that good. When I first met him, he was only very good, and not quite fantastic yet. He asked me in a friendly way if I wanted to roll, which is BJJ speak for spar. I had, up to that point, rolled with and lost to some very good BJJ guys, but this was another level. He completely owned me. Worse than that, he would talk me through techniques and moves to get him into a submission. Not towards a submission, but right into one, at which point he would stop talking to me and escape the position and faster. than I could follow, he would start to put me into a submission, and then talk me through escaping it, improving my position, and then submitting him, at which point he would escape, seemingly without effort. I felt completely incompetent. For anyone who has not felt the sensation of utter and complete powerlessness of rolling with a high-level grappler, it is worth seeking out. The difference between striking sparring and grappling sparring is when striking you're always holding back. If you are not, then you're having a full contact fight, which in training is almost always unnecessary. With grappling, however, you can go full contact, as it were, and you do your very best to use all your skill and strength. When you lose or win, it is by submission, they tap out, or due to pain or imminent unconsciousness. Or if they're stupid enough, they go unconscious. Either way, the winner at that point releases the lock, hold, strangle, choke. The difficult thing for some people to deal with emotionally is that they kind of let you live. You literally are allowed not to die or be maimed. This is why I think some egotistical people don't like to grapple, and why one of the first rules of BJJ is to leave your ego outside the training hall. So in fact, Stephen killed me over and over, and I couldn't stop him or get close to doing the same to him. I felt inept, weak, childlike almost. Why do I have to be so humbled? Athena was a very unlikely looking fighter. She was older than me, has a broad smile, wore expensive knee braces due to some bad knees, and didn't look like a tough person. She did an unusual form of Japanese martial art called combat chi, which enabled her, amongst other feats of magic, to be punched in the throat without seeming to suffer any ill effects. This really should have been a warning sign that she was not a regular opponent. Athena has seen me sparring with Stephen, and for whatever reason asked me if I would like to roll with her also. I agreed, and we settled down on the mats into a low crouch to begin sparring. I felt pretty confident, and she admitted she didn't know much of BJJs, I probably did. Plus, she was just what I regarded at the time as a relatively easy target, a piece of cake. I quickly bundled her over and took a top position and clasped my hands to form a strong gable grip across her belly. I had her pinned pretty securely, and though she struggled and was surprisingly strong, I maintained my hold. She then reached around my grip, took hold of my little and ringer fingers of one hand, and twisted them sideways and back, which, seeing as I did not want my fingers to snap, made me release my grip, and Athena escaped. Students new to grappling will often grab small joint holds in a panic, so I didn't take offence, although this was technically an illegal move. I thought I'd let this mild infraction go and just carry on. We jockeyed for a position again, with me gaining the upper hand once more with my strength, and as soon as I did, Athena moved her hand up to my face and gently but firmly pushed her thumb into my eye. Obviously I let her go again, but felt that perhaps she was intentionally breaking the rules, though I chuckled at her behaviour. Despite the illegal move, she had shown restraint, not actually broken my fingers or hurt my eye. But good humour aside, I was going to demonstrate to her that I would not tolerate such poor sportsmanship. I upped my game, muscled through her attempts to restrain or submit me. She continued to try to reach my eyes or fingers, but I was wise to her antics now, and I did not give her that option. This was after some time ill-fated with the crazy Italian progressive fighting system guy, so I knew how to protect my face and eyes. She made an error, and I flowed into a tight armbar submission. I had a good grip of her arm. It was just a matter of when, not if, she would submit. She remained surprisingly calm, and I assumed she didn't fully appreciate the danger that she was in. As expected, she reached across with her other hand towards my hips to signal her giving up by tapping. Unexpectedly, however, she did not tap, but reached past my hip and towards my groin. I froze for a moment, wondering what was about to happen, at which point she pushed aside my cup, took a good hold of my junk through my training pants, and squeezed. Needless to say, this is definitely an illegal move, but it made me release my hold, and she got out of the submission. I burst out laughing at the weirdness of the whole experience, which Athena asked me what I thought was so funny. Well, every time I had you in a submission, you would cheat and do an illegal move to get out of it, I told her. Athena looked at me completely deadpan and said in her Texas Southern drawl, "Honey, we never agreed on any rules. You're younger than me, stronger than me, fitter than me, and obviously better at grappling. To stand any chance of beating you, I have to do everything I need to do to win." I laughed even harder. She was absolutely right. This was an epiphany in terms of the difference between Krav Maga and normal grappling. Within days of arriving to hone my skills, I had my eye split open by a beginner, was owned and tutored at the same time in BJJ by an older woman, and soundly beaten too. It could have been a humiliating experience, but I found it enlightening. For years I had become conditioned to move and react in certain ways. Even in free sparring, there are strict rules that we abide by. And this had shown me some new things. A weapon changes everything. Even a beginner like sticks could crack me upside the head. I'd been beaten by someone nowhere near as skilled as I, but he had a stick, and he was prepared to use it. I had a lot to learn about BJJ. It was my first experience rolling with someone really good. Stephen was also an excellent coach, as well as far better than me. I wanted to learn more. And being better at grappling than someone was not enough in a street fight. Athena had very expertly shown that women can defeat men if they're prepared to fight dirty. There are no rules in a street fight, and I had been soundly defeated. During that trip I also learnt a lot of Krav Maga, but those 3 people taught me a lot about myself. I was not as good as I thought, again. Ernie also gave me a lot of his knowledge and experience during that week. His depth of understanding of fighting was huge. I didn't mean he knew how to throw a punch or a kick, etc. I mean, he really understood the effects, the physical and psychological impact it could have both on the person being hit and the person doing the hitting. To be honest, there was too much to take in. So much in just 1 week left me better, but also more aware of my long and grueling path laid before me. Circumstances would put my training in Krav Maga with Ernie on hold for a while, but I would return to the system with a passion.